This is News at Prime. Let's bring you this discussion now. The Democratic Alliance's Helen Zille is promising to restore Johannesburg to its former glory should she win next year's local government elections. She's been named as the party's mayoral candidate in a city battling infrastructure decay, water problems, broken traffic lights and sewage spills. Zille joins me in studio tonight to talk to us about her plans to fix South Africa's economic hub. Good to have you with us. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Xoli. It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Let's start with the question that, for anyone who would have forgotten, this won't be the first shot of the DA at trying to lead Johannesburg. But the question this time is, what makes this bid different, and why should voters believe that this time will be better than the last?
Whether or not this time will be different depends on the voters. In 2016, we had to go into a governing arrangement that involved an agreement with the EFF. I was very opposed to it at the time. It was one of the reasons that I fell out with the leadership of the party at the time. But it's impossible to have a stable coalition if you have to keep on pandering to the EFF to stay in power. Then it was also very difficult in the second time in 2021 because the EFF, without any agreement with us, voted for our mayoral candidate and then could easily unelect our mayoral candidate. And so we had to see if we survived from council meeting to council meeting. Now, when you are that unstable in government, it's very difficult to deliver. This time, the voters have the opportunity to change the game. They can make the DA the biggest party by as big a margin as possible so that we can put together a stable government that can stay the course. And that will make all the difference.
That's very interesting, because you're not saying tonight that you're fighting for a clear majority. You're saying your votes must be big enough in order to determine who can partner with you. Yet, your internal polls, based on what I was reading today, seem to suggest that you are ahead of the ANC. What makes it difficult to get a clear majority, you think?
You must understand that we have a proportional representation voting system. And in those kinds of systems, it is very, very rare for any party to get a clear majority. Cape Town is an anomaly. The Western Cape is an anomaly. In most countries with proportional representation systems, the president or the chancellor or the prime minister gets elected with in the high 20s to early 30% of the vote. That's how coalition politics work, and proportional representation systems usually end up with coalition politics. Now, I'm a realist. I try very hard not to overpromise. I know what is possible. I've been in this rodeo before. I know that, for example, in 2004, in Cape Town, we got 27% of the vote. We gave it every single ounce of effort for the 2006 local government election, and we got 42%. That was an incredible increase. But then we still had to put together a 7-party coalition to get over 50%. So I'm a realist. I know how hard it is to get up there. I will work every single day to convince the residents of Joburg that we can start fixing what has been broken over 30 years. We can actually put the effort in to start fixing this great city that we all love. And it's up to the voters. If they want to give us a chance, they must give us a clear chance and a platform on which we can really make a difference.
You've invoked Cape Town. Let's talk about Cape Town. Where the DA governs, it governs better. That's your party's slogan.
It's also the president's slogan, yes.
I knew you would go there. How do you respond, though, to someone who says their experience of Cape Town depends largely on where you live?
Well, the question to ask is, have you got clean running water? If you do, the local government's doing its job. Is the electricity reaching your house? And is it properly metered and managed? If it is, the local government's doing its job. Is your refuse removal done regularly and reliably? In the informal settlements, it's double as regular as in the leafy suburbs. A big tick there. If you report a problem on the system that the Cape Town City Council runs, is it dealt with promptly? Yes, a big tick there. Is your sewage flowing, not in the streets, but down the pipes? A big tick there. People must understand what local government does. Local government is never going to put you in a 3-bedroom house with a double garage and a big garden. That is what people do for themselves, through getting a job, through progressing, through getting promoted, and it all starts by having decent basic services, access to a good clinic, access to a good school. Those are the things that government does. And so if you go to some of the very poorest areas in Cape Town, you will find if you have a checklist of everything that local government is supposed to do, you will tick down every one of them. When people say that to me in Cape Town, I say, come, let's go and check to see if the local state is doing its job. And on all the issues the Constitution says local government must do, you put a tick next to it in Cape Town. Also, Cape Town has the most generous package of free basic services to the poor. The wealthy pay a lot to subsidize the poor in Cape Town, but also we have the lowest municipal bills for houses under 5 million rand in Cape Town. So it is an extraordinary package of free basic services, reliable service delivery on all the issues that local government is supposed to deliver, and major cross subsidies that the very wealthy often don't like. But we say to them, we have a duty towards the poor. We've had in-migration, massive urbanization in Cape Town, hundreds of thousands of people. And in Stats SA and in all the other services, we've kept up with basic service delivery. And what's even more important, we've kept up with employment. The employment of people in Cape Town is much higher than the rest of the country, despite the massive in-migration. The unemployment statistic is 10 percentage points lower.
Yeah.
So we mainly deliver to the poor in Cape Town.
I mean, I have a couple of areas of disagreement with you when you talk about the sewer. I remember a very well-publicized campaign, and if anything, at that time, it was Senzo Mchunu, who now is the suspended police minister. At that time, I think he was the minister. Indeed. He was standing in basically a puddle of sewage, right in the middle of a township in Cape Town. You talk about in-migration. Where you are coming, in-migration is at its worst, but we'll talk about that.
Why do you say worst? At greatest? Why do you put a negative, pejorative connotation?
Well, let's continue on this thing, because if we do this, we won't have enough time. Columnist Jan Gerber, he refines my previous question to you by suggesting the following, and he says that service delivery in Cape Town still depends greatly on race and class. Is that fair criticism, you think?
I really don't think it is. But actually, it's inverted. If you're poor, you get massive subsidies for your services. So in fact, you get far more for your money. That's the actual inversion. So I don't know what Jan Gerber meant, but if you're poor, you'll get a far greater subsidy from the Cape Town City Council than you will if you're rich.
Let's come to Johannesburg then, because the spread of poor areas here is perhaps much larger than what you would have experienced in the Western Cape. It probably will make it harder to manage, but I want to know from you what your plan is in trying to revive, not restore, revive basic services in such an area.
Well, the big challenge in Johannesburg is how the budget is structured and prioritized. The ratio between operational expenditure and capital expenditure, which is all your investment in infrastructure, is very skewed. Johannesburg has the lowest investment of all metros in South Africa in basic maintenance. It spends 1% of the budget on maintenance. Now that is far too little, and that is why you've got the crisis that you've got. It should be moving towards 8%, which is what the Treasury recommends it should be. And the first thing I would do is to really study line by line the city of Johannesburg's budget. A massive problem with Johannesburg is that they duplicate structures. They've got all these municipal entities, and then they've also got departments dealing with exactly the same things in the structure of the administration. Now, that duplication is endlessly wasteful. And municipal entities can work well in places where there isn't corruption. They can work very well. But in Johannesburg, those municipal entities have become the equivalent of Eskom and all the other incredibly corrupt state-owned enterprises that have fleeced the public and have been the architects of state capture. And that's exactly what has happened with many of the entities. Not all. 2 of them got clean audits, but most of them have been an extraordinary drain on the public purse, staffed by deployed cadres and unable to do the job.
Let's go to the point you made earlier about in-migration. Informal settlements in Johannesburg, they have grown and are growing rapidly to a point where the Premier of the province, Panyaza Lesufi, has even spoken about demolishing them by force, if he must do that. Do you have a different strategy on how you will deal with this?
We are in the middle of a major wave of primary urbanization in South Africa. In not too long a time, over 70% of all South Africans will be urbanized. That is a massive statistic. And that is primary urbanization that brings people from subsistence living in the rural areas to the urban areas in the hope of getting a foothold, of getting a clinic nearby, of getting a school nearby, of getting services, and eventually getting a job. That's why people come to town. And it's an inevitable and unstoppable process. Rather prepare for it, rather do your best to support people in it to live a dignified life. But if you start with influx control and all the apartheid forced removals and all that sort of thing, it's not going to work. We do not want land invasions. That is an absolutely critical point. We can't accept land invasions, but we have to make sure that we streamline the red tape process, that we absolutely ensure that we are doing our best to get ahead of the game, which is not going to be possible. But if anybody thinks that a local government can get rid of shack settlements, they are dreaming. Nobody can do that. The very best we can do is get people settled on land with basic services, grow the economy by creating stable government and corruption-free government, attracting investment, growing the economy so that it creates jobs, so that people can get jobs and climb the ladder that the state has created through good basic services, education, and healthcare to get out of poverty.
How do you achieve that, though, without... I see where you're going with the Panyaza Lesufi route, where he says he's going to have to do it by force, if he must do that. But in Cape Town, not so long ago, the city was accused of gentrification. Would that be the best way to deal with it?
The city doesn't gentrify. People gentrify. They move into a place, they fix up their houses, and it starts looking nice, and then house prices start moving up. That's not the city. The city provides services to everybody. And then, because there's such a demand to come and live in Cape Town, because it's stable, because it's corruption-free, because it gives you reliable services, people from across the country want to come to Cape Town, and across the world, in fact. The tragic thing about Joburg is it's a place that people want to leave. And we have to turn that around. We have to make it the place where people who can afford to go elsewhere actually want to stay. Because it's those people who invest, those people who create jobs, those people who pay the rates that can cross-subsidize free basic services for the very poor. So that is what happens. And when people come to your city, property prices do start going up, and people start buying where they can afford and then improve the area. That's what happens.
Let's take a pause. And when we return, I'd like for us to talk about the scourge of drug abuse and how Cape Town has dealt with it and how you would deal with it here, because it's causing major problems in communities. Stay with us. We continue the conversation after this. Watching News at Prime, and if you're just joining us, we are in the middle of a conversation with the DA's mayoral candidate for the city of Johannesburg. Helen Zille is my guest. Let's continue this conversation. Let's talk about the scourge of drug abuse. It's now counted among the major causes of crime, child neglect in communities. How have you dealt with this in DA-run areas? What's your approach, and what lessons would you bring to Johannesburg?
Look, this is a really terrible scourge, and I focused on it as much as I could when I was mayor and premier. We started 25 drug rehabilitation centres, outpatient centres, especially for methamphetamine, or what is known as TIC in the Western Cape. We do our very best, but the bottom line is that it's far too easy for people to get drugs and far too difficult for the drug dealers to get caught. My suspicion is that the drug dealers buy off the police, and I am really pushing very, very hard, together with the DA, to have policing decentralized from the national level, and that power be given to metros to run the police, so that we can make sure that we have line function over the police to ensure that we deal with all of the problems of the police being bought over by criminal syndicates. That is a very, very serious issue. I mean, even the Madlanga Commission is looking into that at the moment. And I used to go on drug marches, anti-drug marches, and all of that in Cape Town, and I used to get arrested, not the drug dealers. Everybody knows where the drug dealers' houses are, yet nothing happens to them. My question is why? There's far too easy a pipeline of drugs, and of course that's the root of the gang culture that we have in many communities in Cape Town, and it's the root of the fighting between the gangs. So until we have line function over the police, we can just put a band-aid on the crisis. Also, parents have a role. Parents must ensure that they are role models for their children. Fathers must be there for their children and be there and take responsibility. This is not only the state's responsibility, it is a partnership. We have to work together. And far too often I see young children with parents who are drug addicts and who are providing the worst possible example to their children. This is a joint effort. Everyone who has children has a sacred duty to act as a role model, be a good example, and raise those children properly.
So what's the solution, Helen Zille? Are you saying that if police powers are devolved to the province, that's the best way to cut the supply lines of drugs?
It's one of the best ways. It's one of the best ways.
Is that what you would bring here? Is that what you would suggest?
Yes, I would definitely suggest that here. I would definitely suggest that once we are managing the Johannesburg Metro Police Department properly, and once that system is running smoothly, as it is in Cape Town, we've got a superb local police force there in the city of Cape Town. The Cape Town City Police Force is very good. And then you have line function over the police. Then you can do your best to eradicate corruption. You can have proper investigations into corruption. You don't have the top brass, when the DA is in government, being bought off by the police or in cahoots with Kat Matlala or whatever it is. We have politicians who are dead opposed to corruption and to criminality. And then you can start having some line function over the police, start doing proper investigations, and start getting to the root of these things.
But you have not won this war.
We will win this war.
Despite what you are saying, that
we
you
will
have the
win
best.
this war. We're going
it's worse in Cape Town.
We're going to the Constitutional Court to argue that it's irrational for the National Police Minister not to devolve policing powers to the city of Cape Town. and to the province of the Western Cape. We'll fight this till the very end, till we get to the root cause of it. Yes, we will.
Just very quickly, you've invoked the Madlanga inquiry.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on what Mkhwanazi had to tell that commission this week?
Well, Mkhwanazi must still come up with some proof. He said a lot of things that people believe is true, and that may well be true, but we have to see some solid evidence for that.
Okay, let's come to politics now. So, some people have said, why is it that the DA cannot let Gogo Helen go and retire, look after her grandchildren? Will you be content, Helen Zille, with Johannesburg being the defining moment of your political career? Are you happy with Johannesburg being that final stamp that says this was her legacy, her political career?
Xoli, we first got to win an election. That's a very, very long road to run. It's going to be a year-long campaign. It's going to be tough. It's going to be exhausting. I'm up for it. I've got a lot of energy. I love working hard. I love having a purpose to live for. And my purpose is for South Africa to become a successful democracy. So I will work till my last ounce of energy towards that end. And you know, the DA doesn't deploy people. It advertises. We've got a position now that we're wanting to have applications for. We've got the mayor of Johannesburg. They put out a broad advertisement for people outside the party. Everyone can apply. And then you apply, and then you go through a rigorous process. And I decided I'd put my name in the hat. And I had to go through a rigorous process that is fair to everybody who participates, and someone comes out at the top at the end of the day.
You know that this whole story of deployment in the Democratic Alliance, or at least you're using the word deploy because the ANC has a deployment committee. The Democratic Alliance has also been accused of deploying people, but we are not there. Can I ask you whether your party has failed at succession?
Failed at succession?
Yes. Because here you are running for the city of Johannesburg. Where are younger leaders who should have been prepared?
Well, the people like Chris Pappas, who's in his early 30s, I think now. People like Celia Brink, who's in his mid-30s. People like Jordan Hill-Lewis. People like Peter Texera, they're all in their 30s, all very, very young. People like Retief Odendaal, all over the place. There's some older ones like perhaps myself and Stephen Karabi and a few others. But we have young people all over the place. And they go into the process like I did, and they come out tops, and they compete against people much older than them, and they come out tops. So that is how we work it in the DA. We're not ageist. We don't say at 29, you're too young, Chris Pappas. Sorry, you can't become a mayor. You're too young at 29. And we don't say to Zille, who's 74, sorry, you're too old. We say, what can you do? Are you committed? Do you know what's going on? Can you make a good presentation? And can you stay the course? That's what we ask. Some people have retired in their 30s. Some people like me haven't retired at 74 and don't plan to retire.
Has your party made a decision yet on when it is that you are going to, or at least John Steenhuisen is going to replace Andrew Whitfield? The president says he's been waiting for a name from your party.
Well, this is not my lane, and I try to stay in my lane. That is clearly the lane of our leader, John Steenhuisen. He picks the cabinet, and I'm definitely not part of that lane.
So you're not going to answer tonight?
I don't know the answer.
John is going to reshuffle his own small cabinet of ministers.
I genuinely don't know the answer to that question. I genuinely don't know the answer to that question. And it has, frankly, got nothing to do with me.
All right. Can I end the discussion on a slightly different note, Helen Zille? You are a leader that we have come to know in South Africa, and therefore your views certainly do count here. There was a time when the Democratic Alliance said no one is allowed to comment on the Gaza issue. I'm bringing this up because the General Assembly the United Nations General Assembly sits this week. And among the key discussions there, major countries in Europe are saying they are now moving to a step of recognizing an independent Palestinian state. Does your party have a position on what has been going on in Gaza?
Yes, of course. I mean, we believe in a two-state solution, a Palestinian state and an Israeli state. We believe both have the right to exist in peace and harmony with each other, and that is what our foreign policy has always supported.
Do you believe a genocide is taking place in Gaza?
Well, genocide is a very big word. I haven't been to Gaza and I don't know, but I certainly do know that Hamas has spent all its energy trying to obliterate the state of Israel. And the most critical point is that they must both recognize that each has the right to have a state and to live in peace side by side. And once that happens, we can solve this problem. Both have a right to exist side by side in peace, and the minute that recognition happens, that war and conflict will be over.
I'll ask you this question again, but differently this time. This week, a UN Commission of Inquiry has found that indeed a genocide has been committed in Gaza. So I ask you again, does the Democratic Alliance believe that a genocide has taken place in Gaza?
The Democratic Alliance has not discussed that particular issue. What we do discuss is the issue of what we propose to solve the problem. And what we propose to solve the problem is a two-state solution. And we're very pleased that a lot of the rest of the world is converging behind that idea. And that is premised upon both sides recognizing that the other has the right to have an independent and free state that can live in peace, recognizing the right of the other to exist. Many people think this is the most complex problem in the world. It isn't actually. If that condition is met, there will be peace.
Netanyahu says he will not allow for an independent Palestinian
I can't comment on Netanyahu. I'm not running for a mayor in Israel or Palestine or Gaza. I'm running for mayor in Johannesburg.
Helen Zille, thank you very much for your time. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's the DA's mayoral candidate for the city of Johannesburg, Helen Zille.